Okay, we're finally ready after much hustle and bustle. We're starting. Okay. Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Um, we're finally back in person, and we're starting with a fantastic class in connection with the upcoming holiday of Purim. Purim is one of my all-time favorite Jewish holidays. Can't compare holidays, but for me personally, what resonates with me is Purim and Hanukkah. So I don't know which one resonates with me more, but I really, really enjoy Purim. It's fun. It's ridiculously deep. Um, it's so real. I don't know. It's a fantastic experience. Anyway, and the more you learn about it, the better. So tonight's class is actually going to be Purim oriented, although it's actually there's going to be a brief connection with the current this week's Parsha, the Torah portion, but it's going to be focused mainly on Purim. If you'd like to sponsor tonight's class or a future class, please reach out. You know my email, rabbi@jewisherie.com. Um, Purim is in less than 2 weeks. Actually, it's closer to 1 week at this point. March 24th. It starts March 23rd at night on Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos. We are having a fantastic Purim in Mexico Purim party here. You're all invited. Whoever's watching, if you're in like some other state or country somewhere, I guess you're also invited too. Here at Chabad, March 24th at 5 o'clock, I think. Get ready, come hungry, and be excited. So let's learn about Purim. But before we do, we have to start with tzedakah, with charity. Grab a coin or your dollar bill and grab a charity box and put it in. Do a mitzvah. Okay, pass it around. We're going to start with our now traditional Code of Jewish Law of the week. How a Jew is supposed to act. Okay. One moment. So we were middle of the. One moment over here. What happened? Yes. Okay. So we're learning the laws of washing the hands in the morning. So we're to wash our hands in the morning. That's the way we start our day after reciting the Moda Ani, thanking God for our soul back. So, how do you wash your hands? So this is the manner in which one should wash his hands in the morning. He should take the vessel. The vessel refers to a washing cup. If you've seen any Jewish home or synagogue, they have a washing cup. It's a cup. It's not a cup. It holds more water than this. It's about this big. It had two handles. He should take the vessel with his right hand, place it into his left hand, pour water over his right hand first. Afterwards, he takes the vessel in his right hand and pours water on the left hand. This procedure is followed 3 times. Right hand on the left hand, on the right hand, on the left hand, on the right hand, on the left hand. It is preferable to wash one's hands until the joint of the forearm, otherwise what we call in English a wrist. That's where you're supposed to wash until. It's supposed to cover all parts of the hand. I don't know if probably say that actually. However, under difficult circumstances, it is sufficient to wash only one's fingers, just the fingers themselves, including the thumb. But that's just pressing circumstances. You should wash your entire hand till the wrist. A person should wash his face out of respect for his creator because it says in the Torah, it states man was created in the image of God. He should wash his mouth because the saliva which remains after sleep is not becoming when he has to recite God's great name in holiness and purity. Afterwards, he should dry his hands and dry his face well. If you shower in the morning, this takes care of that. At least the face part. I don't know about the mouth. I shouldn't drink water in the bathroom from the shower. For various reasons. But I will point out, it's important to note that washing the hands in the morning and washing hands for bread are slightly different. Washing your hands in the morning, like we just said, you pour the right hand first, then the left hand, then the right hand, then the left hand, then the right hand, left hand. Washing for bread on Shabbos, when you eat before you eat challah, or anytime you eat bread, actually, you wash 3 times onto the right hand first, and then 3 times onto the left hand. So it doesn't alternate. It's 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And again, the water should cover the entire hand, all the fingers, the palm, the back, all the way till the wrist. Okay. Mordechai, the Jew. The word Jew is a derivative of Judah, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. So why are we all referred to by the name of a single tribe? This is a very interesting discussion over here today. Okay. Every school child who learns the Torah reads about Jacob, our forefather, also known as Yisrael or Israel in English, and his 12 sons who created the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. Throughout the Torah, we are called, who knows? Guess. Don't guess. Know the answer. Don't know the answer. It's okay. It's all good. Ivrim, we're called Ivrim. In English, we call that Hebrews. Okay. Jews are always called Ivrim to one degree or another. But suddenly, in the Purim story, the title of the Jewish people switched to a different word, Yehudim, Judeans, or more simply Jews. Why does the Megillah, which is the Purim scroll, the book of Esther, why does it call us Yehudim? So this is actually a very interesting class. It's based on two different talks from two different Rebbes, actually. The previous Lubavitch Rebbe, it talked from Purim 1941, and a talk from the Rebbe 30 years later, 1971 on Purim. Okay. So, section A, behind the scenes of the Purim story. Before we even continue, we're going to give a brief overview of the Purim story. It's a long story. It's an exciting story. It's a dramatic story. It's a miraculous story. It's a lot of things story. But we're going to try to keep it short just to get so you understand at least what we're talking about. This Purim story, written in the book of Esther, which we call the Megillah or Megillas Esther, took place over around close to 2,500 years ago. It takes place in Persia. There's a king. His name is Achashverosh. I'm going to give you a disclaimer. There's an English pronunciation officially to his name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I've seen it written with an X or two X's. I'm not even going to try. Achashverosh is the Hebrew way of saying it. That's how I'm going to say it. And he rules over basically the entire civilized world. He rules over 127 countries. And his rule extends everywhere. And he makes it a very large feast, party for 180 days, 6-month feast. Can you imagine? He invites everybody, and then at the end of it, he makes a 7-day feast for just the people in the city of Shushan, the capital city. And he invites everybody. And at this last part of the party, he's boasting to the other ministers and kings and princes there that the women of they're saying that the women of their countries are the most beautiful in the world. And Achashverosh, drunk, says, "Oh, baloney, you have to see my wife." And they say, "No, this can't be. We have the most beautiful women." And he says, "No, Vashti." That's his wife's name. And he orders his guards to bring Vashti to the party to show off her beauty. They go up to her. In short, she refuses, and the advisors advise the king that this is ridiculous. She doesn't listen to your word. You have to kill her. So he says, "Oh, that's a great idea." He's drunk, remember. He wakes up the next morning. He's hungover probably, and now a little bit more sober, and he realizes what he did, and he feels terrible, and he makes this basically a beauty pageant to try to find a new queen. And women are running from all over the world to come to be the new queen of Persia. And there's this one Jewish girl named Esther. Okay, Mordechai, the leader of the Jewish people at the time, a holy man, is actually related to Esther. If I'm not mistaken, some say he was her uncle, some say he was her cousin. Regardless, they were related. And they find her, the people who are looking for contestants, they find her and they decide that she's a participant, that she doesn't want to be. So Mordechai, tells her to keep strong, keep faithful, and you'll be fine. And Achashverosh, wonder of wonders, actually picks her to be the queen, so she becomes the queen of Persia and his wife. There's a guy, a bad guy. His name is Haman or Haman. Haman is the Hebrew pronunciation. He's a really evil guy, a really bad dude. And he sees that this Mordechai, so there's a rule that the king put in place, a law, as part of, basically international law, that if you saw this minister, he was actually a guy in the government, a high official in the government, if you saw him in your presence, you had to bow down to him as a sign of respect and honor and dignity and all that stuff. The sages actually say that he wore an idol around his neck so that people would bow down to him. They'd be bowing to the idol. And he sees that everybody's bowing down to him except one particular individual whose name is Mordechai, who is also a very high official in the government, but he's a Jew. And we mentioned him like a minute ago. And Haman's very angry about this. And he decides that, oh, Mordechai the Jew, all Jews are a problem. And he decides he wants to kill literally every single Jew on the planet. Rahman al-Islam. And he goes to Achashverosh and he says, "This is a big problem. There's this nation. They don't listen to you. They don't do they don't follow your rules and your laws. Please allow me to do whatever I want with them. Here's 10,000 silver coins just to seal the deal." And Achashverosh says, "Keep your money. Here's my ring. Do what you want." A signet ring to sign a decree. And he puts a decree and he makes a lottery, a raffle, actually, when he wants to actualize this horrible plot. And the day he lands on is the 13th day of the Jewish month of Adar. That's why the holiday is called Purim, because of that lottery. Purim means a lottery, raffle. And fine. That's a point I wanted to say, and I'm forgetting at the moment. I forgot. Anyway, it was important, but I guess it wasn't that important. Anyway, so this decree is put out. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. The Holocaust was one of the worst tragedies that has ever happened to the Jewish people. And no matter how you slice it, it was really, really bad. In potential, though, what Hitler did was peanuts compared to what Haman could have done. Haman had the ability literally to wipe out the Jewish people completely, every single Jew on the planet. That's how bad this decree was. It was really, 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 really scary. So going further in the story, obviously the Jews find out about this decree. It's public information that people around the world are given permission to kill and murder every single Jew they find at their desire on the 13th of Adar. So Mordechai calls the Jewish people, to fast, to repent, to do teshuvah. And Esther, who's queen, she sends a message to Mordechai saying that the Jews should fast not just for one day, they should fast for 3 days. And everybody should fast, including herself. She's fasting as well. And after they fast for 3 days and they change their behaviors, they weren't in a very good spiritual space. She enters the king's private chamber and she wasn't called. She didn't have an appointment, and it was a really big deal because you don't just walk into the king's room, even the queen. And she literally was, if there was a very big chance, and there was like a 95% chance that Achashverosh would, not be happy that she showed up, and that would basically be her committing suicide. But miracle of miracles, he didn't get upset. In fact, he was very, very happy to see her, and he's in a really good mood apparently because he offers her half his kingdom, like whatever you want, just tell it to me. So she says, "I want to make a party with you, me, and Haman." Oh, okay, interesting, fine. So she makes a party, and Achashverosh shows up, and Haman shows up, and then Achashverosh says again, "What can I do for you?" And she says, Tomorrow we'll have another party. We'll talk then." So Haman is on seventh heaven because he's leaving the palace, and he's so excited that he, of all people, was invited to a private party with him and the king and the queen. He's like he's top dog. He's the best guy there is. And he's leaving the palace, and he encounters Mordechai, his best friend. Hopefully you're not watching, just listening to audio. You should know that I did put quotation marks. They're not good friends. Anyway, so he gets really intensely angry, and he gets home and he's venting to his wife. Her name was Zeresh. She was not a holy person, to say the least. And she suggests that he build a gallows 50 cubits high, and go ask the king for permission to hang Mordechai on the gallows. This is the leader, basically the leader of the Jewish people. This is a big deal. So he loves the idea. Him and his wicked 10 sons, they build the ginormous gallows. Um, Fine. Middle of the night. Okay. Middle of the night. Haman makes it his business. He's going to the palace. He's going to go talk to the king to do this horrible thing. So he goes to the palace, and it happens to be at the same time, Achashverosh can't sleep. He's having insomnia. He's having major issues. And there's no pills back then to deal with that. I'm sure they had other remedies, but so he calls one of his guards and he asks him to read from the Royal Book of Chronicles, storybook of the history of the kingdom. He flips to a page, and it happens to be a page with the story of Mordechai saving the king's life. Okay. A little while back, Mordechai had overheard a conversation between two guards in a different language, but Mordechai was fluent in many languages, and he overhears them plotting to kill Achashverosh, the king. And he tells Esther about it. Esther tells the king, and the king is basically, off with their heads kind of mood, and they die. And he saved the king's life. It's put into the Royal Chronicle book, and fine. Achashverosh, in the middle of the night, he's half asleep. Well, not half asleep. He's more awake than asleep. He hears this story again, and he goes, "Oh, I remember now. I remember that story. And what was the reward we gave him?" And this guy, the reader says, "Well, nothing. Someone saves a king's life, and you don't give him a reward. I'm just reading the book. I'm paraphrasing." So at that moment, Haman walks in, and he says, "Haman, yes, Your Highness. What should I do for someone? What should the king do for someone who wishes to honor?" So Haman thinks in his head, obviously the king's talking about me. This is fantastic. Everything's going right today. So he says, it's very simple. I have a great idea. You should take the royal crown, put it on this man's head, and dress him in the royal clothing, the king's clothing, put him on the royal horse, and somebody in the king's government should parade this man through the streets and announce to all the people, this is what the king does for someone who he wishes to honor. So Achashverosh says, that's a fantastic idea. Do all that for Mordechai, and you'll parade him through the streets. And you can imagine Haman's reaction. He is off his rocker, completely confused and disturbed. And that's what he does. He parades him through the streets and announces this. And in fact, it's a part of the story where he's going past his own home, and his daughter, who's also a wicked person, sees this parade happening, and obviously Mordechai's pulling the horse, and Haman, her father, is on the horse. So she grabs a large pail of disgusting garbage, and she pours it on the man's head, and the man looks up, and it's her own father, and she jumps out the window out of fear and confusion and disturbed, and then she dies. Anyway, it's a very weird story, in this part at least. It's a very incredible story. Anyway, going forward, the party happens. I'm sure Haman didn't smell very good. He's covered in garbage. And he comes to the party, Achashverosh and Esther. And the king says, what do you want? Esther says, there's somebody trying to kill me. He says, what do you want? Somebody's trying to kill you? Who's trying to kill you? Not just me, my whole people. What? That's crazy. Who would do such a thing? And she points at Haman and says, this wicked man right here. And he goes, what? No way. And the king leaves the palace in a rage, and the Haman pleading with Esther to save his life. Please don't do this. And the king comes back, and he thinks that Haman's trying to do something terrible to the queen. So he doesn't. He's such an angry mood. And one of his guards, who the sages tell us is actually Elijah the prophet in disguise, whispers to Achashverosh, Haman actually built a gallows to hang Mordechai, the Jew. Maybe you should hang him on there. So Achashverosh says, great idea. So they hangs Haman on his own gallows. And a decree is put out they couldn't retract the decree for whatever reason, the original decree, and the decree is put out that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. And they do, and a miraculous thing happens. The Jews are victorious, they're safe, and they rested on the 14th of the month of Adar, a day later after the decree was supposed to happen. And that day we call today the holiday of Purim. And at the last chapter, the king puts another tax on the people. And there's a big question about that. Why is that even relevant? But it's not for now. Okay, after that whole prelude, now we can actually start the class. We might go a little faster than I'd like because that was a long introduction. Okay. Section A, behind the scenes of the Purim story. Now that you know the Purim story, now we can go behind the scenes a little bit. In 1941, it was at the height of World War II and the Holocaust in Europe. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, we call the Frierdiker Rebbe in Yiddish, was in the United States. A year earlier, he had been in Warsaw, Poland, living through the Nazi bombardment daily. And through a miraculous chain of events, he succeeded in escaping the inferno and arrived in New York City. On Purim of that year, the previous Rebbe held a Hasidic gathering, a Farbrengen, where he gave an overview of the Purim story and explained what had happened behind the scenes of the Megillah, drawing parallels between those events to what was happening to European Jewry. This is going to be quite fascinating. Hold on to your chairs. Buckle your seatbelts. We're going to go and peel back the layer, of the outer surface of the Purim story, and go and see what's going on behind the scenes. So the state of the Jews in Achashverosh's time, starting with source 1, Esther, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1, very first verse. It was in the days of Achashverosh, who ruled from Hodu to Cush, 127 provinces, says the previous Rebbe. In the year 3392, after creation, during the Babylonian exile, the Jews were dispersed in many lands, including those ruled by Achashverosh. By the way, please, guys, take the apple turnovers that are over there. They're delicious. Over 50 years had passed since the destruction of the first Holy Temple. They were torn away from their home where they had witnessed the miracles in the Holy Temple and had heard the words of the prophets. In some of the countries in which they were now scattered, they were maltreated. In others, their contributions to society were recognized and they were treated accordingly with proper respect. Achashverosh was by nature fickle. What does fickle mean in English? I don't know. Fickle. Unpredictable. So here, actually, the words on the side is not the original language. The original that was said in was in Yiddish, and they translated it to Hebrew, and this is a translation into English. The Hebrew word that's here for fickle, I don't know the word. I've never seen such a word. Okay, listen. They do it. They know better than I do. He was by nature fickle, arrogant, wise in his own eyes, and short-tempered. He was a mixture of good and evil, wisdom and foolishness, and altogether. Thus, the sages express both opinions in the Talmud. He was a clever king and he was a foolish king. There's an argument. Was Ahasuerus a clever king, a wise king, or a foolish king? They're both true. In the times of his father Darius, and also in the early years of his own reign, the Jews of his provinces made a comfortable livelihood. As time went on, for business reasons and through their business contacts, they lost touch with their life of Torah and mitzvot, merged into the surrounding culture, and sought luxury. They forgot that they were the chosen nation. They took lightly the fact that God, quote, chose us from all the nations and elevated us above every language, end quote. And they began to live an unbridled and carefree life like the nations around them. Jews were dropping Judaism like flies. It was terrible. Jewish assimilation of Persian culture. Source 2, this is Esther, the book of Esther, the Megillah, chapter 1, verses 5 through 11. When these days were over, the king made for all the people present in Shushan, the capital, for everyone, both great and small, a banquet for 7 days in the courtyard of the garden of the king's orchard. There were tapestries of white, green, and blue, held by cords of linen and purple wool to silver rods and of marble pillars, couches of gold and silver on a pavement of green, white, shell, and onyx marble. Why is that relevant? We need all these details. Just say it was a nice party. This is a big question, another big question that's asked. Why do we need to know these details? And it's answered. I don't remember the answer offhand, so we're going to continue. The verse continues. Drinks were served in golden vessels. We're on the bottom, page 2. Drinks were served in golden vessels, vessels of assorted design, and the royal wine was in abundance as befitting the king. The drinking was according to the law without coercion, for so had the king ordered every steward of his house to do according to every man's wish. This is an important point. Everyone was invited to the original party, the big party. Even Jews, okay? Ahasuerus, for whatever reason, wanted everybody to come, and he wanted everybody to be happy and comfortable there. So the verse tells us is that La'asos kirtzon ish ve'ish, that Ahasuerus said that you should do like the will according to the desire of every man's wish. The sages tell us this means like the wish of Haman and of Mordechai and Haman. What other thing that means is that the food that was served at Ahasuerus' feast was actually kosher. It was kosher. And he encouraged Jews to come, and Jews were very happy to come. There was one Jew who made it a big deal that Jews should not attend this party. His name was Mordechai. He called to the Jewish people and said, do not go to this party. He understood the ramifications of going to this party, even though the food was kosher. Vashti, the queen, on page 3, Vashti, the queen, too, made a banquet for the women in the royal house of King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the king's heart was merry with wine, he ordered. Now, these 7 names are written transliterated into English. I will have a harder time pronouncing them in English than I do from the original Hebrew. I'm going to read them in the original Hebrew. He ordered his what is it? He ordered Mehuman, Bizsa, Charvaina, Bigsa, Avaksa, Zesar, and Charkas. Okay, wonderful names. The 7 chamberlains who served King Ahasuerus to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the royal crown to show the peoples and the nobles her beauty, for she was beautiful. Source 2a. Let's see how horrible this king was. The Midrash says on these verses, some said at the party, the women of Media are the most beautiful, and others said the Persian women are the most beautiful. Achashverosh the fool said, the object I use is neither Median nor Persian. She is a Castite. Would you like to see it? Yes, they responded, but she must be naked. Of course, Achashverosh answered, she will be naked. And this is the meaning of the verse. The sages tell us that he said that she must be brought with the royal crown means only with the royal crown. Achashverosh was not a really nice person, you can tell, right? So, says the previous Rebbe, Achashverosh had conquered many countries, and his Jewish citizens, having contributed to his war effort, were rewarded financially, as well as with expressions of gratitude and government posts. Upon his victorious return from a major war, Ahasuerus hosted mammoth feasts for all of his citizens. The Jews too were invited by the royal organizing committee, which had been instructed to provide each guest with the food and liquor he wished for. These feasts of non-kosher delicacies and wild debauchery vulgarized the Jews even more. The Jews became intoxicated by their wartime earnings and by the king's letters of gratitude. They lived in the biggest and fanciest palaces and enjoyed their free life without Shabbat, without kosher, without mikvah, without tefillin, etc. 2 major problems the Jews faced at the time. One is they were dropping Judaism. They stopped observing the laws of the Torah in very literal ways, and they stopped caring. Connected with that, and really kind of the reason for that, let's say possibly, is that they wanted to be like everybody else. They kind of lost touch. They lacked sensitivity to how important, how precious it is to be a Jew. And they wanted to be like all the other people around them. They wanted to look like non-Jews. They wanted to dress like them. They wanted to talk like them. They wanted to behave like them. They wanted to be part of their culture and society. Look, they have it good. They're happy. They're the big shots. We want to be like them. And this was kind of the reason why a lot of the Jews attended the king's parties, because they wanted to be in on this action. I will point out in the second to last paragraph we just read, it says these feasts of non-kosher delicacies. I don't know why it says that. For one, the food was kosher. 2, unless I'm mistaken, and there was kosher food and non-kosher food. My understanding is that there was just kosher food. These feasts of non-kosher delicacies also in the Hebrew over here on the side, it doesn't say non-kosher. I don't know why it says non-kosher in English. Regardless. Okay. Ivri versus Yehudi. Source 3, Esther chapter 2, verse 5. There was a Yehudi man, a Judean man in Shushan, the capital, whose name was Mordechai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Said the previous Rebbe. The term that properly describes Jewish lineage is Ivri, or a Hebrew. Thus we read, the survivor came and told Abraham the Ivri. We see in a verse in Genesis, in Bereshit, there is that Abraham, Avraham, our forefather, is called Ivri. And that is how Jews define themselves from that time on. We're on page 5. Yep. The name Ivri indicates that the Jewish people are descendants of Abraham. That's what Ivri means. That's what Hebrew means. Abraham requires no introduction. He was the first to make mankind aware of the name of God, who created the world and directs it by specific divine providence. And he taught mankind how to serve him. He pursued this holy mission undaunted by physical danger. The title Ivri is the Jewish people's crown of a good name, so to speak. It signifies it signifies the innate self-sacrifice of Jewish men and women, young and old, for the observance of the God-given Torah and its mitzvot. That observance flourished in defiance of danger in all countries and throughout all the generations until it weakened in the time of the kings of Judea and Israel. At that time, the healthy 1,000-year-old Ivri began to present a changed face. To a certain extent, the Torah and mitzvot Ivri received political soil and was recognized as an independent nation. There was a certain point in our history where the title Ivri became misused. Ivri means a Jew who is dedicated to God, to Hashem and his Torah and his commandments to the depths of his soul, even to the point of self-sacrifice. That's what Ivri means. At a certain point in history, Ivri started becoming a title that's used for something else. It means a Jew. A Jew. What's a Jew? A Jew is this nation that they're called Jews. That's it. That's the end of the story. They have a history. They have a culture. That's nice, but there's just another nation. A lot of nations in the world. There's another one. Jews. Okay. Hebrews. Nothing too significant. But it's not just that, but they became a political thing. There's a people they're called Ivrim, Hebrews. They're another nation we have to contend with in our society. Page 6. The whole world, says the previous Rebbe, even Amalek, the wicked nation, knew that the Jews, the seed of Abraham, were the chosen people. That phrase, chosen people, means the nation of God. However, when the political Ivri came into being, he proclaimed to the world that he was a nation and secured the support of political experts who, first of all, negated the Torah view in general and partially exchanged the Torah and its mitzvot for alternative ideologies. In this way, two kinds of Ivri came into being: the Torah and mitzvot Ivri and the political Ivri. This helps us understand a very interesting verse in the book of Jonah. Book of Jonah you might be familiar with. We read it on Yom Kippur. It's a very short book in the 24 books of the Torah. I'm going to, very brief. Jonah is one of God's prophets, and Hashem tells him, you need to go to this country called Nineveh. They're very wicked people. You need to tell them they need to do teshuvah. They need to repent, or else they're going to have a bitter end. So Jonah decides, I'm not going to deliver the message. Why? Because if he doesn't deliver the message, can't be held accountable. Nobody ever told them. Nobody warned them. So he runs away. He doesn't go to Nineveh. He goes on a boat to the big storm, and nobody can figure out why there's a storm because they look around, they see all the other boats, clear, beautiful skies, the waters are calm. Their one boat is crashing the waves and everything. Hope that wasn't too loud, but I just hit the mic. And they figure there's something wrong with somebody on the boat. So they're going talking to all the people, and they find Jonah on the boat, and they say, "Who are you? What do you do? What do you do for a living? What's your business here?" And he responds, Ivri Anoichi. I am a Jew, I am a Hebrew. Ves Hashem Elekei Hashemayim Ani Yoreh. I fear the God of heaven. And the question can be asked, why does he give this long description? Just say, I am a Hebrew. That's it. I'm a Jew. I am a Jew and I fear the God of the heaven. Why is that relevant? We'll see. We can now understand why the prophet Jonah did not identify himself by simply saying, Ivri Anochi, I am an Ivri, but specified, I am an Ivri and I stand in awe of God in heaven. Because in his time, there already existed two kinds of Ivri, the genuine Ivri and the counterfeit Ivri. Jonah therefore added that he was God-fearing, thereby clarifying that he belonged to the genuine Ivri people. This also gives us the reason why Mordechai in this story, the Purim story, the Megillah, is called Yehudi, the Jew, which is a different title, to emphasize that he was a Jew who was loyal to tradition and observed Torah and mitzvos. So let's see that inside. Source 4, Esther chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. After these events, King Achashverosh promoted Haman, the son of Hamdata, the Agagite, and advanced him and placed his seat above all the princes who were with him. All the king's servants who were in the king's gate would kneel and bow before Haman, for so had the king commanded. It was law. But Mordechai would neither kneel nor bow. That came out weird. Bow, not borrow. Bow. Then the king's servants who were in the king's gate said to Mordechai, we're on page 7, why do you disobey the king's orders? You got to bow down to Haman. What are you doing? When they had said this to him meaning Haman, to Mordechai, day after day, and he did not heed them, they told of this to Haman to see whether Mordechai's words would endure, for he had told them that he was a Jew, Yehudi. Again, new title. He's not called an Ivri. Haman saw that Mordechai would neither kneel nor bow before him, and he was filled with wrath. But he saw it contemptible to him to lay hands on Mordechai alone, for they had told him Mordechai's nationality. So Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout Achashverosh's entire kingdom, Mordechai's nation. Says the previous Rebbe. As one of the royal advisors, Haman had many acquaintances among the political Ivrim. Again, these were Jews who didn't look, talk, or act like Jews at all. They looked like any Jack or Harry on the street. They spent time eating and drinking together, and there were no points of conflict between them. Their Jewish roots were unnoticeable. And they too kneeled and prostrated themselves before that villain. Haman had Jewish acquaintances. Haman could not understand why Mordechai was different from the other Ivrim. He knew that these guys were Ivrim, this guy's an Ivri, and they're acting very differently. He couldn't understand it. After all, he too was a political figure, an extraordinarily proficient linguist who interacted with the highest government officials. So why was he so different from the other Ivrim? Page 8. That question lasted only until his underlings, his people, explained to him that Mordechai was a Yehudi. That was what made him different. He wasn't a typical Ivri. He was something different. He was a Yehudi, as distinct from an Ivri. They explained to Haman that Ivri was a political term that could include someone who opposed the Jewish religion or even belonged to a different faith. A Jew who doesn't act Jewish, doesn't believe in Judaism or anything, he could still be called an Ivri. An identifying name can exist even in someone's imagination. For example, a person might assume a subjective identity as if he belonged to a certain country and a certain nation, regardless of his actual religion or lineage. It's very simple. I could decide right now that I'm president of the United States. That's it. I'm no election. Nobody knows who I am. It's not relevant. I'm president. Does that make me president? No. If somebody calls himself an Ivri, yes, they're Jewish, but it's a political Ivri. They're not acting like their name. It's a total facade. The name Yehudi, says the previous Rebbe, they explained, describes a genuine Jew who believes in God and faithfully and energetically observes his Torah and his mitzvahs to the point of self-sacrifice. It was at that point that Haman's gross and cruel heart sought to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Yehudim. There's an important point I want to bring out, but I'll do it in a minute. Source 5. Haman's hateful campaign. Esther chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. Haman said to Achashverosh, there is a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws differ from everyone else's laws, and they do not keep the king's laws. It is therefore of no use for the king to let them be. If it pleases the king, let it be written to destroy them, and I will weigh out 10,000 silver pieces into the hands of those who perform the work to bring it to the king's treasuries. The king took off his ring of his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hamdata, the Agagite, the adversary of the Jews. Source 6, this is from the Talmud, the tractate, the book of Megillah. By the way, there's an entire tractate, entire book of the Talmud, which is dedicated to the laws of Purim. It's fascinating. Talmud says, they do not keep the king's laws means they are idle the entire year. Every day they say, today is Sabbath, today is Passover. Haman made this point, and actually Rashi gives another interpretation that they do not pay taxes and dues. Whatever the exact thing was, or he maybe said both, he pointed fingers at the Jewish people and said, these people are not following the king's laws. They say, okay, it's time to work. And they say, oh, work, it's Shabbos today. I can't work on Shabbos. Okay, come another day. Okay, gotta work today. Today's Passover. What do you mean? You can't work on Passover? Today's Rosh Hashanah. You can't work on Rosh Hashanah. Every day of the year, they have another excuse why they can't work. Says the previous Rebbe, with all the power at his disposal, Haman launched an extermination campaign against the Yehudim, Mordechai's people, against the Shabbat observers. He convinced Achashverosh that they were unproductive and lax in their civic duties because they were forever claiming that today is Shabbos, today is Pesach. Proficient in the power of wealth, he offered Achashverosh 10,000 silver talents in exchange for the bunch of Jews that were scattered throughout the kingdom. Even if Haman distinguished between Ivri and Yehudi, his sons and followers made no such distinction. They hated and oppressed the Ivrim exactly as they hated and oppressed the Yehudim. They were shown the door and disgracefully driven out of their high positions. They were robbed of their capital, their gold, silver, and jewelry, spat on and thrown out of their mansions and bereft of all their property. In a word, they were reminded of their long-forgotten and suppressed lineage. There was now a wave of intense suffering for all the descendants of Abraham, Yehudim and Ivrim alike. One moment. Okay, there's a question I want to touch upon later, but I want to talk about it more now. Usually talk about the longer explanation comes afterwards, but let's pause here for a second. Haman was one of the most evil people who had ever walked the face of this earth. Part and parcel with that, Haman was also incredibly intelligent. Okay, he wasn't stupid in the slightest. He was a very smart man. Haman has this issue with Mordechai, the Yehudi, right? The Jew. He doesn't bow to him. And it really deeply disturbs him that there's a person that exists that's not bowing to him. So this is Haman's logical conclusion. Ready? Because this Jew is not bowing to me, I need to kill every single Jew in the world. That's what his thought process was. How does that make any sense? If he's upset at Mordechai, then why was his focus on every Jew? It would make sense that he should be upset only at Mordechai and want to do something terrible to Mordechai, God forbid. What is the logic? What is the thought process to get from this guy is on my nerves? He's making me very angry. I want to kill him and all his people. Where did all his people come from? So Haman again was very, very smart, and he although he was incredibly evil, he saw the truth. Maybe he didn't technically understand the truth, but he sensed it. What was the truth? We'll touch more on this soon. The truth that he saw was that Mordechai is not bowing down. Why is Mordechai not bowing down? What is it about Mordechai that's causing him to not bow down? Everybody else is bowing down. Because Mordechai has this Jewish spark. He's got this soul, something inside him that keeps him committed to his Torah and his mitzvahs and his God under all circumstances. Haman could not stand that. And he realized this is not a Mordechai thing. This is a Jewish thing. All Jews have this. All Jews have this thing inside them. Every single one. Whether he's a Mordechai, whether he's eating the most non-kosher foods, whether he's not keeping the Sabbath, whether he's nothing. Every Jew from the let's use the words highest and the lowest, lowest to the highest, so to speak, has this, what Haman would call a problem. Mordechai, you see it clearly. Other Jews, you don't. Haman understood that push came to shove, that would come out. And that's the reality. Talk more about that soon. So Haman saw the truth, and this is the truth of every single Jew. This is a reality today. This is not something in the Purim story. This is the reality of Jews. We have this thing inside us that when push comes to shove, we don't let up. We can't let up. It's against our bones. Okay, let's go further. Source 7. Mordechai awakens the nation. Esther chapter 4, verses 15 through 16. Esther ordered to reply to Mordechai, page 10, sorry. Go assemble all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast on my behalf and do not eat or drink for 3 days, day and night. I and my maidens will fast likewise. Then I will go to the king contrary to the law, and if I perish, I perish. Previous Rebbe says, at that critical time, Mordechai focused all his efforts on education, Jewish education. In Shushan, the capital city alone, he gathered 22,000 Jewish children who studied Torah and observed mitzvahs at the risk of their lives, thereby demonstrating their pride in being Yehudim. In fact, all the Yehudim, men and women, old and young, the more learned and the less learned, were armed with the sense of Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice. They all, without exception, were prepared to allow themselves to be slaughtered or burned for resting on Shabbos, for keeping kosher, for observing family purity, or for wearing tefillin. As proud Jews, they scoffed at Haman's followers and his religious oppression. All in all, the spiritual state of the Jews in Shushan, and likewise throughout the 127 provinces, was lit up by that flame of self-sacrifice. And we know the end of the story. The end of the story is Haman was killed. The Jews were saved. They were victorious in this war. They were safe. They were healthy and happy. And it was one of the greatest miracles in our history. Previous Rebbe ends off. We're on page 11, concerning the miracle of Purim, the Megillah writes, these days are recalled and observed in every generation. Every generation, every family, every province, every town. These days of Purim will not vanish from among the Jews, nor will the memory of them perish from their descendants. There is no need to explain these words. Everyone clearly understands what they mean. It is important, however, to note that for the Purim miracle to take place, there must be Yehudim, Jews with Mesirat Nefesh, with self-sacrifice for the Torah and the mitzvos. What the world is now going through, 1941, should remind us, Jews, of the era of Haman. History is repeating itself in startling fashion. In all countries, Jews are in an ocean of woes. The Jews overseas are in the midst of a conflagration. Yeah. We are outside the fire. Many positive things are being done to help our brothers overseas, and people are giving tzedakah, but that isn't all that has to be done. The main thing is to do teshuvah, repentance. Jews must not despair, even in the face of greatest danger. Even in the present, extraordinarily dire situation, Jews must be steadfast in their hope and trust in God. On no account should we rely on physical weaponry and mortal strength. May God lend strength to those who are defending the cause of what is right, and we ought to help them by whatever means we can. At the same time, however, we Jews must use our eternal, dependable, and divinely promised weapon, which is, quote, if you walk in my ways, my capital M. That is, teshuvah, repentance. In plain words, this means observing Shabbos, kosher, family purity, tefillin, and the mitzvos in general. Jews must not despair. This was a talk given by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1941, 83 years ago. Section B, who is a Jew? 30 years later, 1971, the Rebbe held a public Farbrengen, gathering, on Purim and addressed the same point about Mordechai being referred to with the title, the Yehudi. Page 12. The Rebbe says, the Megillah refers to the children of Israel with the unusual term Yehudim. This is most prominent with regard to Mordechai. It says there was a Yehudi man in Shushan, the capital, whose name was Mordechai, a Benjamite. Although Mordechai was from the tribe of Benjamin, he is still referred to as Yehudi, even though the simple meaning of that term is a member of the tribe of Judah. The same is true of all Yehudim in all the King Achashverosh's countries. Achashverosh ruled the entire world at the time. So his kingdom is certainly included members of all the 12 tribes of Israel. Nevertheless, the Jews are consistently referred to specifically as Yehudim. Now, there's a question on the table the Rebbe is presenting us. This is the first time in Torah literature that we find Jews being referred to with this new title, Yehudim, Jews. Okay? And this is a two-faceted question. Is that a word, two-faceted? Dual-faceted. Mordechai, Yehudi, literally means of the tribe of Yehuda, of Judah. There's 12 tribes. One of them is Yehuda. Yehudi means somebody from that tribe. But the verse clearly says that he was from the tribe of Benjamin. Is he from the tribe of Benjamin? Is he from the tribe of Judah? Which one? It's one or the other. Not only that, this is the first time that not only Mordechai, but Jews in the Purim story are every single time referenced by the title Yehudim, Jews. But they're not all from the tribe of Judah. They can't be. So there's an explanation. The Rebbe is going to suggest an explanation and say it doesn't work. And then we're going to provide the actual explanation. This can't be attributed to the fact that King Sancherib had earlier mixed the entire world so people were no longer aware of which tribe they descended from. Right? So there was an Assyrian king, his name was Sancherib. He made military conquests and ruled the entire Middle East. He also conquered the kingdom of Israel and exiled its people, and only his war against the kingdom of Judea was eventually unsuccessful, as related at length in the book of Kings. The sages tell us he mixed up the world. He took people from one place, moved them somewhere else, and he made the world into a big mishmash, chalent, blender situation thing. So you might say that people didn't know which tribe they were from. So you just give them a general title to everybody. Doesn't work. Why? For the books of Ezra and Nehemiah relate that there were a number of Jews who brought detailed genealogical charts tracking their tribal ancestry. They knew where they were from, most of them. There were also Kohanim and Levites who know until today that they belong to the tribe of Levi. I'm staring at one. Yeah. Not me. I'm not from the tribe of Levi. Levi. That's the real way to say it, Levi. Nevertheless, everyone is referred to as Yehudim. The explanation on page 13. The explanation for this can be found in the Talmud's teaching. Anyone who denies idolatry is called a Yehudi, which literally means an acknowledger. Thus, the name Yehudi doesn't denote descent from the tribe of Judah. Rather, all Jews, including the Benjamites, the Kohanim, the Levites, and all the rest, are all called Yehudim on account of the rejection of idolatry. Let's see that inside source 8 from the Talmud. Mordechai is referred to as Yehudi, Jew, apparently indicating that he came from the tribe of Judah. But in the continuation of the verse, he is called Benjamite, Yemini, which indicates that he came from the tribe of Benjamin. Rabbi Yochanan said, actually, Mordechai came from the tribe of Benjamin. Why then is he referred to as a Yehudi? On account of the fact that he, rejected. That's an easier word for me. He rejected idol worship. For anyone who rejects idolatry is called Yehudi. So Chassidus explains the connection between the word Yehudi and rejection of idolatry. The root of the word Yehudi is hoda'ah. Hoda'ah means acknowledgement. By rejecting idolatry, they're acknowledging the truth of the entire Torah. As the Talmud teaches, that anyone who rejects idolatry is considered to have acknowledged all of the Torah. You might have a question. Big question, right? So why are Jews called Yehudim in the Purim story? Because anyone who rejects idolatry is called the Yehudi. So according to that, seemingly many people in the world today should be called Yehudim, no? Even if they're not Jewish. Why? There's many people that aren't idol worshippers. I'll even spin this a different way. Atheist doesn't believe in anything. He believes in atheism. Let's put it that way. Actually, I could say that's a form of idolatry in a sense as well. Somebody who rejects idolatry, he's called the Yehudis. What it said, the sages tell us. What do you mean? So seemingly there's a lot of Jews today, much more than we think there are. Obviously, the truth is that's not the case. That's not what it means. What it means is anyone who rejects idolatry is called Yehudi. You have to flip it around and to understand what it truly means. Somebody who is truly a Yehudi is somebody that indicates that person rejects idolatry. Meaning like this. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Okay. Or my brother told me a joke once. He said, you have to listen closely. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I've said it before. Meaning I'll say it again, right? Okay, so there's a big difference between Jews and other people, okay? You have a lot of religious people in the world that follow many different religions. There's Christianity, there's Islam, there's Buddhism, and start naming all left and right, all hundreds and thousands of them. And one might have the notion that Jews are just the same. These people follow this religion, these people follow this religion, and Jews follow Judaism. A Jew is somebody who follows and believes in Judaism. That's what people think. It's a mistake. It's not true. It's not correct. Because even if a Jew doesn't enrich their life by following their own heritage and faith, or even if they reject it completely, they're still Jewish. I don't know of any other religion that somebody rejects that religion, they leave it completely, and they're still considered as part of it. I don't know of such a thing. A Jew is a Jew. They can't change it. It can't be changed. It's not possible. But it's not just an ideological thing. It's a very real thing, okay? And the proof, unfortunately, is an unfortunate thing, but it's you could see the beauty within the horror, I guess you could say. There's a small shining spark, which is time and time again, Jews have been put up against a gun, a knife, a sword, a bayonet, whatever it is. Threatened, you better drop your religion and accept my religion or else. And the or else was it was very clear what or else meant. And time again, Jews have said, I'm not. Go ahead, shoot me, kill me, stab me, whatever it is. And they lost their lives. They got killed. We're not talking about people with long beards and women who cover their hair all the time. We're talking people who didn't believe in Judaism, people who were atheists, people who didn't care the slightest about anything Jewish. when this came up, they couldn't say, "Yeah, sure, I'll bow down. I have to stay alive." It just they couldn't allow themselves to do it. How does it make any sense? How is a Jew who's completely not interested in Judaism, they want to just live their life, do their own thing, and somebody comes to them with a knife, says, "You better, bow down to my deity, or else you better accept my religion, or else," and the Jew can't bring themselves to say, "Sure, I'll do it." The only thing they could say is never, no. Why? Because Jews are not people who believe in Judaism. Jews are people who are they're part of Judaism. They're part of Hashem. They're connected to Hashem. They can't separate themselves from it. It doesn't matter what they believe or they don't believe. It comes out eventually. So we're going to see that more inside now. When forced to choose, Jews stay with God. Every Jew, irrespective of their position and status, automatically recoils when he hears something idolatrous and rejects it. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, explains regarding the verse, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, that a Jew neither desires nor is capable of being disconnected from God. The only reason it is possible for a Jew to commit any transgression is because he thinks that this particular transgression doesn't affect his Jewishness. But when idolatry is at stake, this mistake is impossible. So the response is rejection. So the book of the Tanya from the Alter Rebbe explains that when a Jew understands that taking a certain action will separate them from God and the Jewish people, they will stand firmly with both feet on the ground and refuse with all their might, even giving up their life. We're actually, due to time constraints, we're actually going to skip source 9 from the Tanya. You could take this home and read it yourself. I actually recommend that you read it. Let's on page 15, top of page 15. I want you to read the first paragraph of page 15. Every Jew possesses this nature, says the Rebbe, regardless of his tribe or of origin. Even if he is from the lowliest of the tribes, when it comes to rejecting idolatry, the source of the term Yehudi, he is on par with the greatest of people. Okay, reading just that paragraph. In this talk, the Rebbe focuses on the positive aspect of the difference between Ivri and Yehudi. The Rebbe emphasizes that throughout the Megillah, it is not only Mordechai who is referred to as Yehudi. Even those Jews who were, eating non-kosher food and not keeping Shabbos and not keeping family purity and not wearing tefillin, not lighting Shabbos candles, all these people, they're all called Yehudim. That is because Mordechai inspired everyone to act with self-sacrifice for an entire year, I just say, and refused to serve idolatry. Indeed, even though the Jewish people were in mortal danger for almost an entire year, none of them considered converting in order to save themselves. Their souls shone openly, and they all risked their lives to sanctify God's name. It might be mentioned here, but actually Haman, okay? The Alter Rebbe actually says this, writes this. If Haman, maybe it says in the Talmud actually, don't quote me. If there was a Jew that would have said, Haman, I'm not Jewish anymore, he would not have killed him. He would have been fine with that. But no Jew even had the thought to say such a thing. Never entered their mind. The ultimate goal of self-sacrifice is that it should be channeled into the entire physical body and into the entire spiritual corpus of mitzvos. The 248 limbs of the physical body correspond to the 248 positive mitzvos. And the 365 sinews correspond to the 365 negative mitzvos. Self-sacrifice is a great and powerful thing, an expression of the deep connection between a Jew and his creator. But self-sacrifice in emergency situations is not enough. When we experience such a moment of self-sacrifice, we need to ensure that we channel this powerful energy into our future day-to-day lives. And this is the meaning, this is where we'll end off, I believe. This is the meaning of the verse, the Jews had light and joy and jubilance and honor. There's a verse toward the end of the Megillah, after the whole miracle, said the Jews had light and joy and jubilance and honor. What do these terms mean? Talmud tells us, source 10, page 16. The Jews had light and joy and jubilance and honor. Rabbi Yehuda says, light is Torah. As the verse states, for the mitzvah is a lamp and the Torah is light. Joy is referring to the festivals. As the verse states, you shall rejoice in your festivals. Jubilance is circumcision, the bris. As the verse states, I am jubilant over your words. Honor refers to the tefillin. As the verse states, all peoples of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will be afraid of you. And Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, these are the tefillin worn on the head. This is a very important piece, by the way. This is just a side comment. Right before, sometime before, I think the Yom Kippur War, the Rebbe started pushing for Jewish men to put on tefillin. If they weren't putting on tefillin until now, they should start putting on. If you can't put on, if you feel like you can't put on tefillin every day, put on once, whenever you can. Getting Jews to put on tefillin, based on this piece of Talmud, where Rabbi Eliezer says, it quotes the verse that all peoples of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will be afraid of you. And Rabbi Eliezer says, being called by the name of the Lord is referring to wearing the tefillin. When a Jew wears tefillin, our enemies are afraid of us. And you saw what happened in the Yom Kippur War. It was crazy miracles. So nowadays as well, it's important to put on tefillin as much as you can, every single day if you can. Rashi says, light is Torah. Haman forbade Torah study. Festivals, the day is commemorated as a festival. Circumcision, Haman forbade all four of these. Finishes off the Rebbe. Based on the above, light and joy and jubilance and honor complements and explains the verse's opening words, the Yehudim, the Jews. The starting point is the Jews, self-sacrifice to reject idolatry. As the Alter Rebbe explains, the Jewish people had self-sacrifice to sanctify God's name because had they converted, Haman wouldn't have done anything to them. Rather, they stood ready all year to give up their lives and did not consider any other option. The readiness of the entire people to give up their lives for God is the merit that led to the abolition, hope I pronounced that right, of the decree. That is what led to light and joy and jubilance and honor. Today as well, in our days, when we have enemies that are seeking to destroy us, just like Haman did, we have to respond with teshuvah, repentance. Repentance sounds so scary. It's very practical, very, very practical. You got to do more mitzvahs. Very easy. Do more mitzvahs, learn more Torah, pray more, do all the Jewish stuff that we've been doing for millennia, okay? We're tefillin, light Shabbos candles, family purity, kosher, the works. It's going to be really good. It affects the world in a good way, and it affects us in a positive way as well. It actually is good for us. Okay. Any questions, comments? No. All right. Thank you all for coming and taking part in tonight's class. And we will see you all next week, God willing. Emirza Hashem, as we say in Hebrew. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.